My name is Rick with Alcohol and Drug Counseling Studies Institute, where we turn negative pasts into positive futures. If you want to be part of the solution, be part of the team, make sure to click subscribe and click your notification bell to make sure that you never miss any of our videos. So let's get into the nitty-gritty about actually what does it take to become a substance use disorder or an alcohol and drug counselor in the state of California. I don't know if there's really a lot of confusion about it. It appears there is, because I do get a lot of questions about this. So I want to make sure that I clear this up for every one of you and make it as simple as possible. I'm just going to give you a little bit of history real quick about California. So at one time, there was a total of, maybe even at one time there was even more. So at one time, there was a total of 9 certification boards in the state of California alone. Private boards, everybody was scrambling all over the place. No one board didn't know what the other board was doing. I mean, it was truly a mess. And this was just in the 90s and even in the early 2000s. So not really all that long ago. And the interesting thing is that there were so many boards that not one board knew what the other one was doing. Counselors were leaving one board if something went wrong, and they went to another board. It was just completely a mess. And also the standards were all over the place. One board allowed you to become certified if you had 125 hours, something like that, of education. Another board required more. Look, finally California is getting its stuff together, and I am really giving a big shout out to CADCII, to CCAP, and to CADCII. You know, the boards, I mean, they're just doing a phenomenal job in California putting that unity together. And I personally just love what's going on there. So let me tell you about what you need to do in order to get certified in the state of California. And we're just going to talk specifically about CCAP, because that's just going to make it easier instead of going through each board. Maybe later I'll do a video down the line breaking down each board standards. But primarily, if you're able to meet the standards for CCAP, then you're going to have the choice of, you know, which other board you really want to go to. So it all starts off with getting registered, okay? With CCAP, they call it an RADT, Registered Alcohol and Drug Technician. With that, you're able to, you know, practice working in the field in an entry-level position. You might be assisting the counselors with the patients, helping to kind of maybe keep some group order, assisting just with kind of like monitoring what's happening around the treatment center. You might not have the ability to actually do the clinical piece alone. You may have the ability to do it under the supervision of a certified CCAP counselor, or, you know, another certified counselor that works for that treatment center. So the way you accomplish that is by completing the state required 9-hour orientation that has to be completed by an approved organization or an approved provider. So you can't just go to any place that says they offer the 9-hour orientation course. You want to make sure you check with the board's website to see if they're an approved provider of that orientation. And I'll tell you specifically now, I know that their CCAP, for example, you know, they offer the class itself on their website, an online option. They allow it through brining as well, through CADCII, and our school is able to offer it only, you know, to the students that we actually enroll. So like if someone came to us and wanted to just take the registration alone, we wouldn't be able to do it because they have to go to those specific providers in order to get that piece done alone. So once you get registered, what they do is they give you 5 years to complete the rest of your certification process. So it means all of your education, all of your internship hours, and your work experience. The reason they give you that deadline is to make sure that you actually get it done. Because I have seen so many counselors in the past that were registered, and then they got comfortable in their job because they were making some money. They were doing something that they loved. They let 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5 years go by, and they're scrambling to try to get their certification, and they lose their job because they can no longer be registered if they didn't meet that deadline, unless they get extensions and things like that, which are a pain, and they're not always guaranteed, obviously, or there wouldn't be an appeal process for that, right? So you have 5 years. Now what they do in order to make sure that people move forward without having a lapse is every year when you renew at the registration level, you have to complete 45 clock hours of education from an approved school that'll meet the education requirements for the board. So when you go to a school to get your education hours after you're registered, you want to make sure that it's an approved school. Make sure that it's an approved provider. And on each of the board's websites, they have a list of the approved schools. So it should be easy for you to know who's an approved provider, We, of course, are approved by both CCAP and CADCP. So what's the actual education requirement? Now that you're registered, how do you actually get certified? So the minimum hours of education are 315 hours, and our program at ADCS Institute are offered online. Okay, so there are some schools that offer physical locations, some other online programs. There are some community colleges and universities that offer the certificate courses, but those are typically 2-year programs. There are some other private schools that offer the program either in person or also online like we do, but sometimes that tuition could be up to the point of $18,000 up to $27,000, and I'm not exaggerating. So make sure you look around before you start enrolling anywhere. From that point, so you want to complete the minimum of 315 hours of education. After you complete that, now what do? You have to complete your internship or externship, okay? The externship is going to be, it has to be done while you're enrolled in school. There's a difference between work experience and your internship or externship. So a lot of people will call me up and they'll say, Rick, I've been in the field for, 4 or 5 years now. I don't want to have to do my internship. Well, guess what? You have to do it. You have to do it. It's a requirement for the board, okay? And there's a difference between the two because it allows for a double supervision. So you're being supervised by the treatment center that you're getting your hours at, and then we're also reviewing and kind of monitoring what you're doing on site from the educational perspective and point of view. So what we do is we meet with students as they're going through their externship, and we have to ultimately, through CCAP, we have to do a double verification and confirm that those hours were indeed completed by the treatment center. So their supervisor on site submits the report that their hours were completed for internship. And then on the school side, we submit your transcripts for your 315 hours of education, and then also do the double verification for the internship hour. So any school that you go to is going to have to make sure they provide you with the 315 hours minimum of education, and then 255 hours of externship, and that has to be based on the 12 core functions. So now that you've been registered, you've completed all of your education, you have completed your externship, you have all of your documents submitted, and you're feeling good about where you're going. Now, are you certified? No. Now, what do you have to do? Put it all into practice and take that exam. And I know that's the hard part, and some people struggle with that. But that's why you go to school, to make sure that you're prepared for this examination. And then I also encourage people to do a review or a test prep, even if you already have your education hours, because the truth is there's a big difference between the way things are done at specific treatment centers and the way we're actually supposed to do them, okay? And so because of that, it's good to take your test as soon as you're done with school as possible, so that way everything is still fresh. But if you're able to do a test prep or review before you take your exam, that's something that you're going to want to do regardless of how confident you are, because you want to be familiar with the types of test questions that are asked. You could also go to the state board's websites, and they might have some other resources for books and materials that you can study and things of that nature. So you go and you take that exam. So you say, well, good. I've already been registered. I have completed all of my education. And now I passed my exam with flying colors, and I even celebrated with pancakes and peanut butter. Am I certified now, Rick? No. Now what you have to do is you have to complete 3,000 hours. Now remember, you might say, well, how in the heck am I going to get 3,000 hours now all of a sudden? I'm not even certified yet. By that time, you're going to want to be working as a technician or an entry-level, position, because these treatment centers and rehabs know that it's a journey to get your certification, that you're ultimately going to get there. So you're going to be working in order to, to get those hours in some way, or some people do volunteer some hours to kind of expedite, the hours that they need. 3,000 work experience hours is what you need. Once you submit those to the board, then you become a CADC-I. Oh my God. And there's a CADC-II. So what's left, Rick? Okay. So you're certified at that level though. You're a CADC-I. You've already have your certification. You passed your exam. You've been working in the field for, a couple years, maybe by this point, and you're feeling good about your skills. And now you're ready to, get your CADC-II. How do you do that? Complete an additional 3,000 hours. That's it. There's no more test you have to take. And you guys are lucky. When I first, when I got certified back in the early 2000s, after I took the written exam, I actually had to go out and take an oral exam as well in front of these seasoned counselors that made me feel like I was being interrogated in Tijuana. And that's another video maybe, but it was rough and it was nerve wracking. I did pass though. Yay, Mr. Rick. With that, you're going to submit your 3,000 hours. You'll have a total of 6,000. Then all you do is have to worry about renewing your credentials with a certain amount of CEUs. So we're going to stop at that piece because that's kind of where, you know, you're going to want to get to that point of having your CADC-I or being certified by CADCII, you know, or take a look at, you know, maybe the CADI board and look a little bit more. But that's where you want to really be to get to that main certification level. Now, CCAP also does have a LADAC, which is a license level. And so with that, they have some additional requirements of some additional degrees and things like that on top of the addiction or substance use disorder specific coursework. Okay. For those specifics, you know, we'll put a link in the description down below where you can go and learn more about, you know, becoming a LADAC and learning more actually about these steps. We'll also have some links down below to our blog and some of our other resources that you might find helpful. So, all right, Rick, is this video over? We have one last piece. Because one thing I'd like to say is this. Let me take my glasses off because this is serious. In order to be a certified substance use disorder counselor or alcohol and drug counselor, in order to work in this profession, sure, you have to take some education, pass some exams, you know, get your certification done. But more than that, in addition to that, you also have to make sure that you are passionate about the work that we do. You know, because not everybody can really do this work. Some people tend to think that I can become an alcohol and drug counselor or substance use disorder counselor. I'll be great at it because I'm also in recovery. Well, I'll tell you this, as somebody that's been an educator for quite a while, those are usually the hardest students to teach. And the reason why that is because a lot of times, you know, us that are in recovery think that, you know, I've been there, done that. And because of that, I know what it takes to get clean and sober. And the reality is that we don't always know what it takes to get clean and sober. The other side of that is somebody that is considered a normie in recovery that's maybe never used, and they say, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be good at this, you know, Mr. Rick, because I never used crack or heroin. I'm like, wait, you don't have to cry because you've never used drugs. I mean, that's a beautiful thing, right? That's what we want our patients to ultimately learn. Here's the good news. You're going to work with these patients to help them move past the areas in their life that they're struggling with their addiction, with their substance use disorder, not through your experience, strength, and hope. That's done through your own personal recovery, although we do have passion. And so why I mention that is because, yeah, sure, you can get certified and get a job by completing some education, doing some internship, and passing an exam. But if you can tap that passion into it and add the education, and you're in recovery and you're educated and you're able to have some good healthy boundaries, or you know what it's like to be able to get up and not really crave or worry about drugs because you've never done drugs before, and now you're learning what it takes. Here's one thing I tell everyone that's never really, you know, struggled with addiction before. You know what it's like to be in pain. And as long as you can identify with what it's like to be in pain and not really know how to get out of that, as long as we can connect and we have empathy. There's something we're going to talk about some other videos, and I'm going to throw this out because in addition to all of your education, there's a couple things that every counselor will need to have, and that's empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard. And so now that you know what it takes to become an alcohol and drug counselor, I'm sure you're curious about how much you can make in this profession. What kind of salary are you looking for? What's your potential, your financial potential in this career? I've heard people say before, and I was taught this. They're like, if you get into this field, we get into this field because, you know, don't ever expect to get rich. You don't make any money in this field. Well, if you really want to know what our compensation is, to have a better idea, go ahead and take a look at this video, and I'll see you there.